Term that all that, excuse me, term of all that liveth, whose name is inscrutable, be favorable unto us in thine hour. So mote it be. Welcome to Sunday School, everyone. We have all recently lost a great scholar and a great light in Masonry, in the person of Jake Stratton-Kent. I didn't know him well, but we remained in touch. I met him in England about 15 years ago, and we shared a cab to and from an event that I was doing there in London, and he struck me as an absolute delightful, outrageously delightful and unique character. And we've kept in touch over the years, and like I say, we've recently lost him far too early. I guess it was what was it? A little over 10 years ago, 11, 12 years ago. He wrote a marvelous book called The Serpent Tongue, or Liber 187, which was of absolute, and is, and remains, and shall remain, I think, a very, very lucid form of English Kabbalah. And it's the only one that sort of resonates with me, and I was delighted when he asked me to write the introduction to it, or a foreword or something like, I guess it was a foreword. And I guess in honor of Jake, and to show my respect, I would like to read this short foreword that I wrote to his marvelous book, The Serpent Tongue, or Liber 187. And it was published in London, Hayden Press, 2011. There may be a certain amount of truth in the adage, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. But for this old dog, the English Kabbalah may very well be the most important new trick I will ever learn. I suppose I can't be condemned too severely for taking so long to examine this marvelous spiritual instrument. After all, I've spent the better part of my adult life shunning those centers of pestilence who dared to discuss or interpret the contents of Liber Alvel Legis. And my footnote's kind of important here. Liber Alvel Legis is a Class A document. There is and Class A is you don't change the style or letter. It is what it is, and you don't interpret it for anybody else. And Crowley wrote one comment, just a tiny, just a few words. And the comment is also in Class A. And that comment says, "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. The study of this book is forbidden. It is wise to destroy this copy after first reading. Whoso disregards this does so at his own risk and peril. These are most dire. Those who discuss the contents of this book are to be shunned by all as centers of pestilence. All questions of the law are to be decided only by appeal to my writings, each for himself. There is no law beyond do what thou wilt. Love is the law, love under will, the priest of the princes, Ankh Afen Kansu. 666. That's what I meant by, I suppose I can't be condemned too severely for taking so long to examine this marvelous spiritual instrument. After all, I've spent the better part of my adult life shunning those centers of pestilence who dared to discuss or interpret the contents of Liber Al Vel Legis. So, and that's another reason why if you send me your revelations and secret keys and discoveries and that you may have Kabbalistically unearthed in the Book of the Law, and you email me for validation of your discoveries. I don't really mean to belittle your revelation, but I just don't want to discuss it with you, okay? I was especially distrustful of the poor souls who, in exchange for a coronation ceremony and the deed to certain real estate in Scotland, were prepared to assume the mantle of spiritual leadership of the world. Indeed, by 1983, my collection of letters from individuals revealing themselves to be the incarnation of Aleister Crowley, or the one to follow, or his child, and that strangely, or the child of somebody's bowels, rivaled that of Dr. Regardie. Indeed, shortly before his death, the dear man and I even entertained the idea of pooling our letters and communications in a book we were to call Liber Nuts. The authors of nearly every one of these colorful documents claim to have, quote, cracked the code of the Book of the Law as proof, and as proof offered the elaborate explanation of the string of numbers and letters, or words actually is what it says, that begin the 76th verse of the second chapter of Liber Al Vel Legis. 4, 6, 3, 8, A, B, K, 2, 4, A, L, G, M, O, R, 3, Y, X, 24, 89, R, P, S, T, O, V, A, L. Now, just as a short digression, as you think about this, remember it says, I listen to the letters and the words. Or, excuse me, listen to the numbers and the words. It doesn't say letters, it says words. But anyway, for example, the father of one to follow was named Kenneth. The Hebrew word for father being A-B, it was perfectly obvious that A-B-K refers to his father, whose address at the time of his nativity, or the nativity of his child, and that strangely, was 4637 Gilmore Street. But owing to the phenomena arising from the obliquity of the Earth's axis between 1904 and the date of his birth, the actual coordinates of his birth were shifted to just across the street at 4638. What more proof could you want? He asked. I didn't answer, but I did call Regardie and shared the story, and we laughed like schoolyard bullies. Today, I am somewhat ashamed of my arrogant dismissals of what I now see as sincere and poignant pleas for spiritual validation from seekers who were desperately trying far better than I to apply the complex and colorful mythos of Thelema directly to their own lives. At the time, however, my cynicism hardened with each new revelation, and so did my disdain for these stillborn prophets and their roaring narcissism, delusions of grandeur, defective Hebrew, disjointed gematria, faulty arithmetic, poor command of the English language, and the utter incapacity to grasp the fact that whoever read their letter would immediately conclude they were mad as hatters. Like most Thelemites, I did my own share of puttering. In the late 70s, I took 3 yellow legal pads and determined the numeration for each word of Liber Al. I did this in a very orthodox manner by treating each English letter as its Hebrew counterpart or counterparts. This was a singularly unsatisfying project. I was perpetually frustrated with uncertainties. Uncertainty over whether or not this T is a tau or a tav or a tet, or if that X is a tzadi or a chet, or if that O is a vav or an oyen. Despair followed frustration when my wife Constance, who hates Kabbalah, continually pummeled me with the obvious fact that Liber Al was not written in Hebrew. So why on earth should the letters of its words be translated into Hebrew? My defense was feeble. For one reason, I explained to her with sweet condescension, I may have condensed it too. I said, to see their relationship to significant traditional Kabbalistic words and concepts. And where do these words and concepts come from, she asked. She knew the answer. She was just being mean. The Bible, I said. I mostly mumbled. Well, the Bible's not my holy book, and the book of the law doesn't need the Bible to prop it up. Show me a Kabbalah in English, one that uses the book of the law and not the Bible. Of course she was, and is always, right. I eventually abandoned this avenue of research and became, for the most part, contented to appeal exclusively to Crowley's writings for insights and inspiration. As far as exploring the English alphabet, I toyed half-heartedly with Liber Trigrammaton, the same way a child pushes his broccoli around his plate. But that was that. I did, however, make one pathetic yet remarkably successful foray into Liber Al practical magic. I projected the numbers and letters from chapter 2, verse 76, on a camilla of Sol, thusly. So in other words, it was a square 6 by 6 that I put 4638 ABK 24 and broke it where the handwritten facsimile suggested that there should be breaks. So I painted it on gold and yellow cardstock, laminated it in plastic. Our first test run of this talisman was to see if it could help us find a new place to live. This may not sound like a very serious magic, but if you've ever attempted to find a reasonably inexpensive house to lease in Newport Beach, California, I'm afraid you don't really know the meanings of the word impossible miracle. Our technique was simplicity itself. We taped the square to the dashboard of our car and drove around the neighborhood where we most desired to live. As rental rates in the new neighborhood were completely out of the price range we could afford, we wisely armed ourselves with a bottle of wine to assure we would not be dissuaded by common sense. Without going into details that are fascinating to us, but I'm sure of little interest to the reader, I will simply report that in the ensuing 25 years, we've needed to celebrate this ritual 6 times to locate new homes. It has always worked to the amazement of our neighbors and friends, and to our own immense satisfaction. I might add that since I wrote this, we were forced to move from the house that we got with that we lived for 22 years. And the talisman, at least as far as we can tell right now, has failed us. Because we're no longer in the Newport Beach, Costa Mesa area. Well, anyway, we're happy that it worked for so many years. But I digress. I mention this magic square not to prove what a clever boy I was or to tout the power inherent in the book of the law. I bring it up only to point out the rather sad spiritual state into which I had allowed myself to drift. There I was, a hotshot Thelemite. I militantly preached that Liber Al Vel Legis was the revelatory instrument of the age. I studied it daily and supported that study by performing rituals based on its deities and formulae, by reading, memorizing, and meditating. I was the best damn book of the law thumper in town. But the most practical thing I'd ever done with it was to concoct a crude talisman for house hunting. Hell, why not just get a sun-bleached buffalo bone, scratched a few markings on it with a sharp stone, and hurl it at the moon? Well, maybe I'm being a bit hard on myself. The young fool, having neither the wit to see or the enormity of his ignorance, nor the good sense to forsake the quest, eventually grew to be an old fool. Don't get me wrong, I don't think I wasted a minute on my magical education. I may have early on abandoned my tinkering with chapter 2, verse 76, but I did spend the next 25 years or so immersing myself in the words, images, and concepts that form the building blocks of the magnificent edifice that is Thelema. I speak particularly of the treasures to be found in Liber Al Vel Legis and the 13 holy books. What an absolute thrill it is at this rather late point in my magical life to finally get a glimpse of what certainly appears to me to be the mathematical mortar that unites these great spiritual stones. 13 holy books are 13 Class A documents, okay? Please do not think that I am presuming to speak for anyone other than myself when I voice my comments in this place. I'm not writing as a spokesperson for any of the fine organizations to which I belong, and whose kind forebodings suffers my membership. However, as an individual, I cannot hide my personal enthusiasm concerning the English Kabbalah based on the, and this is the formula that Jake uses here, of ALWHS. That's sort of the how it's referred to. ALWHS, etc., 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 which you'll find in Jake's book. And the marvelous work being done by Jake Stratton-Kent and others who are continuing to develop and enrich it. They deserve the admiration and thanks of every student of modern magic. Liber 187 is a particularly brilliant example how rituals and exercises can be created from this marvelous structure. After I read it for the first time, I wrote Jake and told him it's so clean it squeaks. It is indeed so clean it squeaks. English words and phrases relating to other English words and phrases, magic words, familiar words that course through the dynamic matrix of a small collection of spiritual literature that I personally hold sacred. Perhaps an old dog can learn a new trick or two. I certainly intend to find out. And that was my introduction to Jake's English Kabbalah book, The Serpent Tongue, Liber 187. So, Jake, we miss you. Also, from the Gnostic Mass. This is the final collect in the collection of collects, the end. Unto them from whose eyes the veil of life hath fallen, may there be granted the accomplishment of their true wills. Whether they will absorption in the infinite, or to be united with their chosen and preferred, or to be in contemplation, or to be at peace, or to achieve the labor and heroism of incarnation on this planet or another, or in any star, or aught else. Unto them may there be granted the accomplishment of their wills, yea, the accomplishment of their wills. Aum. 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 So mote it be. And with that, we'll end Sunday school for today. Until tomorrow, continue to be good to yourself, be good to each other. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will.